Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series Accidentally Adopted. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 6, Beyond the Bulkhead. Dear Diary, Daddy figured out that Sneaky is singling him out for pranks. What else could be flipping all of his work jumpsuits upside down inside his closet except a prank? Daddy said that there is no way that it could be a prank though. His new idea is to get Sneaky to exercise so he's tired enough to sleep all night. But okay, I'll take him to the gym after lessons, but I still told Daddy that it was because of locking his door. Daddy thinks that it's because he's the pack leader, so Sneaky's mad at him for not giving him more attention. Well, whoever is right, I think it's super funny. I did get him to agree to try my idea if it doesn't work. Sneaky's bruises are almost completely gone off his face, and his torso is looking all gross and yellow, but I think that's how bruising looks when it goes away on him. He was cooperative with the pain relief cream, and since he didn't have any kind of bad reactions to it, I was using a higher dosage. It didn't seem to change how he removed, but I know it must have hurt him. You can't get so many bruises and not hurt. He sits still for the treatment still, and for me to fix his braid after sleeping with it done up, so I don't think he's bothered by it. He did something new at breakfast. He went right to the cabinet with the little kid dishes and took out a plate before going to the fridge and loading it up with fruits and greens. Then he looked at the table long enough for us to notice what he was doing and started eating. Sneaky learns fast. Mom wanted to leave him on our quarters today since she was worried about him getting lost, but Daddy pointed out that there wasn't anywhere for him to get lost on this deck, and he'd probably want to stay with Yoiv or me. Well, I pointed out that Sneaky always ends up back at where he's supposed to be, and Mom agreed that it would probably be okay as long as I held his hand in the corridors. Which he did. Everyone wanted to pet him, but it looked like Sneaky was uncomfortable when they mobbed him. I made everyone say hi, only one at a time instead. That seemed to make him feel better. Anyways, Mrs. Hausitz set Yoiv up on some puzzles in her spare room, and Sneaky went with him cooperatively. Today was history, much better than math. We were just going over the Rexveltian quarantine event, since it kind of caused a war between two pretty powerful nations, and still affects the customs in them to this day, even though it was like forever ago. Almost 200 years. I wanted to get into the treaty, since that's what affects us. But blah, 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 you need to understand the full context, blah, blah, boring stuff we already know, blah, blah, to really see how things are going, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. Well, maybe the other kids don't know about the quarantine event, but Daddy's a captain and Mom's a trader, so treaties and quarantines are kind of a big deal to us. Oh, and Yagadril probably knew it was too, since his dad is Daddy's first officer. It was lame because we spent the whole lesson talking about the consumptives, how they spread to new planets by taking over the brains of people, and why Rexvelt had to be quarantined when the first infected were found. But the Yunzians just kind of did that by shooting at Sven ships into scrap without warning. Boring. The peace talks were the best part of that story, and we wouldn't get to that talk about it for a whole week. Ugh. After that, we found out that Sneaky had been sneaky again. Yoiv was in the room by himself, still focused on the puzzle, and didn't know where Sneaky went. He tried checking the storage closet, since we found him in his room the last time he went missing, but he wasn't there, obviously. I explained that Sneaky knew that his room was his, so he wouldn't just go into a room that only looks like it. All of us started to search for him, and just when we were starting to get worried, Sneaky was just standing behind the bulkhead, waiting. Yagdril was fuming that I was telling the truth about how sneaky is. So anyway, a bunch of us went to the gym since I wanted to try to get Sneaky some exercise. Even if I think Daddy's wrong about the pranks, it can't be good for him to be cooped up all day. Sneaky seemed to agree with me, because just as soon as he saw the gym, he took off running. He is fast. No wonder he can sneak around the way he does. I was really impressed because Yoiv had been playing rough with him, so Sneaky must be very gentle. Well, Yagdril couldn't just let us have a good time, no. He had to be all rude and say, "It looks like he wants to run away from you."
Sneaky was cooped up until now for days and days,
How would you feel if you got let out into a gym after that? I'd want to get away from you as soon as possible. Besides, it's just a dumb animal. Look, it's just running in circles. I couldn't let that stand, so I righteously demanded, you take that back right now. Oh, what? He asked, getting up in my face. You're past your halfway now. You think you can back that up? Sneaky is a very smart boy, and you're being awful for no good reason. I was kind of scared that Yagdral would decide that was a fighting insult, when suddenly his feet were in the air and he was flailing around in panic. Sneaky took a step back and put him down. To me, Sneaky looked like he was getting ready to scold Yagdral, but he did the "I am being attacked" yelp and punched him in the head. Sneaky just stood there, looking confused when Yagdral jumped up and down, crying and waving his hand in pain before running away. We didn't point and laugh as he ran. We would have, but Sneaky started doing some quiet laughs so hard that he fell over and got scared that he couldn't breathe. Of course, it couldn't end there. Yagdral just had to tattle on his mom. So Uncle Yemdral and Aunt Mukka came into our quarters with him later, which meant one of the bridge officers was putting a double shift because Yagdral was such a baby. He told his side of the story, where Sneaky was a savage beast who tried to rip his tail off and jumped to snap at his hand. And I told the truth. Daddy pulled up the security feed from the gym and we saw that Yagdral was a smelly liar. All the grown-ups started scolding him at once, and I was just happy that the cameras picked up the entire thing. The weird thing was that Sneaky must have felt sorry for Yagdral, because he snuck into the middle of the lecture circle and put some pain relief cream in his hand. That impressed him enough that he apologized for being a jerk to my Sneaky and for overreacting. Journal entry 6, date 115, name Greg George. There's a gymnasium on this deck. Hell yeah! Once I get access past the quarters pocket, I'm going for a run every fecking day. Hell yeah! Anyway, last night the barracks war continued. Now you can't just do the same prank over and over again. You have to change it up, even if you don't escalate. Otherwise, the enemy just gets used to the status quo and has time to plan their own pranks. Hence, why the dad's strategy of just locking the door to my cabin every night hasn't done him any favors. So I busted out of the door and listened for snoring. Sawing logs, I was in the clear. The name's AT&D, James AT&D. I love those movies. Who doesn't love a suave cyborg super spy? Losers, that's who. Banger soundtrack. I heard they're based off of old 2D movies like Mission Impossible, but I never got my hands on them. Whatever. I'm rambling. So I crept into the master cabin and opened the wardrobe. Jackpot. I turned the jumpsuits upside down on their hangers. Luckily, the hangers had the little bar across the bottom so I could hang them like pants. It might seem like it's not much of a prank, and to be honest, I'm going to pretty easy on him on account that he seems like a good guy and all. But the point isn't to make him miserable. The point is to demonstrate that he can't stop me from finding and screwing with something of his every night. That done, I want to see about the bulkhead. I got a chair from the dining area to stand on, but the panel stubbornly remained inert no matter how I tapped or prodded it. It'd look like it was affixed with small screws with a triangular socket. Well, if worse comes to worse, I can get a big knife from the kitchen and just break the panel off the screws and hotwire the door. Speaking of kitchen, I went and got some more samples from the fridge. My diet is slowly expanding to introduce most of the leafy greens and root vegetables. And I even found a little meat in there. But I don't know if it's some kind of Xeno's poisoned dart frog to me, or if it's like a super special delicacy. My nocturnal tasks completed, I hit the sack for some more dreamless sleep, which isn't what happened. Crap. I'm getting comfortable, which means my subconscious is starting to decide it's safe to start processing the crap. Damn it! I was just seeing that googly-eyed feck with the scar across his face pop up in black void. I woke up, pissed. I swear if I ever see that fecking thing again, I'm going to rip everything it holds dear down around its ears before putting it out of my misery. I calmed down before Lucy came to let me out and smear cream on my bruises. It's a little funny how delicate she is with it, since I'm only cooperating because she seems to feel better after treating them. Then again, it's just a little numbing agent, not anything that zonks me out while the corpsmen pull shrapnel out of the uncomfortable places. They train us to avoid anything that would compromise our tactical ability, and then act all surprised when we don't want to be put under. Rambling again. Lucy fixed my Viking braid and took me by the hand to lead me to breakfast. I was right. The braid blew their minds. God, I wish I had a camera. That crap was priceless. A fruit and lesser salads isn't my idea of a proper breakfast, but it's calories and hopefully minerals and vitamins. It helps that it tasted good. Weird and incongruous, but good. There was some kind of argument, and I picked up a lot of no and lost and what if, but I'm kind of guessing on that last one. There was a lot of nodding, chin-rubbing, and considering glances shot my way, so I was probably the subject of discussion. It didn't seem heated, and nobody except the dad showed any kind of negative emotion, but he seemed more confused than anything else. Good. My ways are mysterious and beyond the ken of the Xeno door locker. Well, I'm guessing Mom had something to do today that she couldn't do from inside the quarters, because Lucy took me and Linus both by the hand right through the bulkhead. The other side, unsurprisingly, was a corridor with bulkhead doors at regular intervals that indicated quarters of similar size. Big ship with a deck dedicated to family quarters. Long hauler or cruise liner. Maybe they're hoping I'll be the ship's mascot. Wouldn't be that bad after all. I'm handsome as feck. Okay, so there's more than only Bleevises on the ship, which isn't too surprising since I know about the spider centaur clickety-clackers and the googly-eyed fecks. But I wasn't expecting an enormous teddy bear. I'm pretty sure that it was 80% floof, and I had a strong urge to pet. But I didn't want to do anything rude. Besides, the kids mobbed me before I got a chance. I lost sight of my escape routes for a minute. But Lucy said something, and they backed off to come forward to say hi, then my nickname one at a time. Consider it. The head patting was kind of annoying, but maybe the red hair was irresistible to these kids. Of the kids, they were mostly believers. But there was one beetle person and a guy with feathers and fur. If I see them again, I'll come up with names for them and their species. There was one Bleevers who didn't come to say hello. I named him Surly. This was a class with a tutor, and clearly where Lucy had been going. Teddy Tutor set me and Linus up with a puzzle in one end of the spare room, but it was easy and boring. To be fair, it was appropriate for a toddler, and Linus was engaged with it. I decided not to distract him and went to watch the lesson. It was laughably easy to slip behind the sofa while Teddy Tutor was setting up a lesson and to just sort of peek around the corner to see the screen of another one of those weird TVs. If you're going to do 3D, just use a hollow emitter. They were doing a lesson on the fecking grubs. Well, that explains why the Republic hasn't met any of these Xenos. I don't know if this means that they kept them from spreading towards their system or not, so we might not have exterminated them yet. I couldn't see the students, and the visual cues for the giant teddy seemed completely different, so I couldn't tell if this was one of those "these things are dangerous, stay away" lessons, or one of those "these things were dangerous, this is how we got rid of them" lessons on account of how the Teddy Tutor was speaking a completely different language from my believers. Translators. They're familiar with translators. That's good news for the Republic, but not for me. The lesson ended and Lucy went for Linus. Then for some reason everybody else went down the corridor too. I just went and waited by the bulkhead. Some of the kids came rushing out of the corridor into the front room and started opening cabinets, and the believers started calling my nickname, except for Surly. He sort of ambled out of the hall and saw me standing there, then got everyone's attention. Whoops. I should have called attention to myself. Then it was the gymnasium. It didn't have basketball hoops, but there were some geometric shapes in the deck, so it must be some kind of sport played in here. Whatever. It was big and open, and I wanted a nice jog, so I took a few leisurely laps just to shake off the feeling of cabin fever, and I noticed Surly and Lucy getting into it. I know kids get into fights, but I was having such a nice time not being cooped up that I didn't want anybody ruining it for Lucy and Linus. So I made my way over to the gaggle of kids. Well, Surly squared up and tensed like he was going to hit Lucy, which is not happening. I grabbed him by his belt and picked him up. He freaked the feck out. It kind of startled me, so I took a step back to prevent him from hurting himself with his flailing. When I put him down, I fixed him up with a mild skull. and was getting ready to make my disapproval motion I'd learned from the cartoon, but he reeled back and punched me in the forehead. I was completely nonplussed, but when he started jumping around and crying, I started laughing. I don't know where he went. I was too busy trying to breathe. That was the funniest crap I've seen in months. Once I got myself under control and up off the deck, I had myself a nice jog around the gymnasium, which several of the kids tried to keep up with. Apparently, I was impressive. I resisted the temptation to sprint. When we got back, Surly and his parents were waiting for us. I don't know why he thought being a tattletale on a ship was a good idea. The common areas of the ship are always recorded. Helps with finding maintenance issues, repelling boarders, and finding out who keeps stealing lunches. So obviously, when it came down to just looking at the recording, he got in trouble. His hand looked a bit swollen, and I kind of felt bad for the guy. In the middle of 4 separate lectures, so I went to the head and found the numbing agent dispenser, walked up to him and gently applied a little to his hand. That's when the tears started. I picked out sorry from all the sounds that made it through, and tears, so I smiled at him. It's okay, kid. Everybody screws up sometimes. Besides, the important thing is whether the dad has learned his lesson yet. It did turn out that I get my own toddler chair. It was decorated with happy cartoon character and had a seatbelt, but it put me in the correct height to eat dinner at the table. Since they went through the effort to get a chair from somewhere in the ship, that means they're considerate of my mental comfort as well as physical comfort. Moving on up. Log 6,000,9.03. Personal, Captain Yomdril. Well, having sneaky isn't boring. I can say that much. I'd been expecting Yagdril to get into trouble since Yemdril said that he's been getting surly with everyone lately. Hormones. But that was the end of the day, not the beginning where I normally start these. Today I found out that Sneaky had turned all of my work jumpsuits upside down. Oh, they were still neatly hung, just upside down. It was absolutely baffling. He also impressed us by getting one of Yovdril's plates and using it to make himself breakfast on. We all agreed that he wants to sit at the table, so I agreed to scrounge up another high chair from somewhere. Cargo Bay 8 is a good bet, since everybody uses it as storage. Why put a perfectly good chair through the recycler when one of your co-workers might have a baby next year? I made sure to go out of my way to show Sneaky approval and affection, so that he would know that he's not being rejected. Hopefully that stops him doing weird things to my stuff. We talked about it. Trandy seemed to think that he's punishing me for locking him in his den at night, but I don't see how he could make that connection. He can't see who locks the door, and really it's Trandy who does it. She maintained that he knows somehow that I made the decision, so he blames me. Well, if he's tired enough, he'll sleep all night, I tell her. No, I think we should leave him in the quarters, Trevdy said. I don't think he'll like being alone, Trandy said. From there, it was an argument. A good one, and Trandy wouldn't back down and used evidence in how we've seen Sneaky act to support her points on dismantled Travdies. Eventually, I had to step in. Hart, she's right and you're only repeating yourself now. She's too old to be refused just on our say-so. Yomdril, it's too dangerous. I won't have... I love you, my heart, but you're simply being stubborn. You're not making a new point. I think that if Sneaky goes out with the kids, he'll probably want to stay with them. You've seen that he's practically attached. Plus, Trandy said, when he disappeared, he went back to where he was supposed to be. Well, if you hold on to his hand in the corridors, it should be okay, she relented. With that, I was in for my uneventful bridge shift, and similarly uneventful rounds checking ship systems and robots. Except my brother interrupted my rounds with a call. Apparently Trandy, Yagdril, and Sneaky got in some kind of altercation, and he and his wife were going to be coming over to get to the bottom of things. I asked if they had already checked the security feed, and he said that he had. Even still, I have to give your daughter the chance to confront him, and him the chance to come clean, he said. Yemdril sounded distraught. I really hope that Trandy doesn't put me through the ringer like Yagdril is doing to my little bro. I told him to have someone cover his bridge shift, and went to my quarters to wait for Trandy and Sneaky. I cut my round short and checked for the high chair before heading back. That thing yanked me by my tail and then jumped up to try and bite my hand, he was saying. Barely still calm and quiet enough to be intelligible.
It's a little monster. It's a beast. It just snuck up and attacked me like it wanted to make me a meal.
My poor brother and his wife tried not to let their disappointment show. Not yet. Is this true, Troundy? I asked.
No, she said calmly. Sneaky was running around the gym when Yagdril started calling him stupid and said that he wanted to run away. I told him that he was wrong, and then he got in my face like I'd given him a fighting insult. That's when Sneaky picked him up by his clothes, then put him down again. After that, Yagdril hit Sneaky in the head, but hurt his hand.
You're a dirty little liar, and we should void that thing.
Why don't we just look at the security footage? Mugka suggested sadly. The boy knew he was doomed. He knew we already knew. We watched it all play out anyways. Then the lecture started. I decided to base mine around a man's responsibility to wield his temper and not be wielded by it. My wife on how to treat innocent animals. My brother on the dangers of picking a fight without knowing what you're fighting. And Mugka on honesty. Somehow, Sneaky got into the middle of all of that without anybody noticing and applied some pain relief cream to his injured hand. Well, that finally got it into his thick head that he screwed up royally. The tearful apology seemed to be enough for Sneaky to forgive him, but I expect his mother will have him grounded for the next week. End of chapter. I would just like to thank the T5 supporters. Bushmaster 117, Casper Arnholtz, Dragzoon W.R.E, Elijah Silvercross, Gray, Jon Creighton, and Sevaren Serberous. Thank you very much.